Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Get Stuck on Sports TV edition right here on Thumb Coast TV. I'm Brady Beedon. He's Dennis Stuckey. And Dennis, let's start with postseason play, but not the boys basketball districts that are coming up. Let's take a look back because hockey season has come to an end. Our area teams all bowed out in the regionals. I'll let you decide where you want to start because all three losses were kind of tough pills to swallow.
Well, I mean, the first one and the one that was the most difficult for me because I'm still having a hard time believing it actually happened was PH. First off, they had a great season this year, resurrected that program, got the numbers up, did some outstanding things, had their longest winning streak in like 15 years, won more games than they'd won in probably 20 years. And I thought they were going to do one other thing this year. I thought they were going to get their first playoff win in 12 years. They were set up playing a team that 99 times out of 100 they beat Brady, but it was the one night where they didn't. And it was a crazy 10-9 game in overtime where they actually led 7-3 at the end of the first period. And everything they shot in the first period went into the back of the net. The other team didn't have another goalie, so the same kid stayed out there for the whole game. And if you would have told me in the last two periods he'd only give up 2 more goals the rest of the game, you would have won a lot of money from me. A lot of money. Because I had PH winning that thing 15-4 in 2 periods at the end of the first period. But they lost that game. That was a disappointment. Don't know how much further they would have gone, but I think that they definitely would have given Davison a better game than what North Oakland ended up giving. Davison beat them 9-2. And then after that, you know, if you win that one, again, each game was going to get a little bit tougher. Clarkston, I think, was the favorite to win that regional. Northern beat Thumb Legion 6-2. Which, again, I thought that was a game that the Huskies should win.
They beat them earlier in the season, so not unexpected.
So that's a nice win for them, and the 6 goals was actually the second most that they'd scored all season in a game. They had 8, I think it was, against UAD. And then in the next game, I didn't know a lot about Rochester Unified, except this one stat that was really spooky to me. In 25 games, they had given up 42 goals. Their worst goalie had a 1.81 goals against average and a 930-something save percentage. And he was their worst goalie. He was also their number 1 goalie. Right. And 1-0 was the final score for Rochester Unified. Defensively, I thought Northern played a pretty solid game. They made about 3 mistakes all night long, but one of them cost them off a face-off. They kind of got watching the puck along the boards and left a guy open in the slot, and he buried it about midway through the second period, and that was it. Bumgardner was Northern's best player. They really didn't generate a lot of chances. Going off the Rochester stats, they said they had about 12 shots on goal. I came back from that game and I said Northern struggled to get 10 shots in this game. So it's right around in that area. They just didn't have the offense. But again, they were in the game. They had the goalie out at the end and were trying. They just couldn't get any shots through. Rochester real solid defensively. And then Marysville. I thought Marysville, they had a good draw. They beat Grosse Pointe North 7-2. They were supposed to do that. And then it became the regional of death because the other 3 teams.
It was a good draw in the fact that they got Grosse Pointe North in the first game, and then it became the worst draw after that.
Yeah, then they get Cranbrook, and if you win that game, you get De La Salle. And Cranbrook jumped out to an early lead, and Marysville battled them, got it back to 2-2 in the third period. And gave up a goal with 2 minutes to go and ended up losing 3-2. That's a pretty good performance by the Vikings against a team that probably came into the building that night thinking they were only going to play 2 periods.
Right. Yeah, because Cranbrook, one of the favorites to win another state title in D3. And, in fact, like you said, up until the very end, it was a tie game until the final 2 minutes of the game. I don't think Cranbrook was expecting to have to get a heroic late goal to take the lead and hold off a pesky Marysville team.
Yeah.
But Dennis, now that the hockey season's done, obviously PH was the story of the season. Northern, a very young team. They were in this spot a few years ago. Hopefully they can build up and do what that last group ended up doing by the end of it, and getting a regional title out of the mix. Then Marysville, a solid team. They lose some talent. They'll bring some talent back. But what are your overall thoughts on this season?
It'll be interesting. Thick and O'Boyle will be fun to watch next year. I don't think you can replace Ben LaValle, and they lose that. Obviously for PH, Case Van Single was out of this world. He put up video game numbers this year, scored 43 goals, had 67 points, and only played 19 games out of their 26. So you can't replace that. But Joey Gilbert will be back next year, and he had a 50-point season. That kind of gets lost in everything that Van Single did. But Joey will be back, and Jackson Turnbull will be back next year, and he had 17 goals this year. So he should only get better. And then with Northern, they'll be a year older, but I need to see who those guys are going to be that are going to step up, and their game is going to get better. They had a couple of guys do okay this year, but nobody really jumped off the page for them. And they need to get they need to have a growth spurt between now and next season. They need to get a little bigger.
Right.
And also the goaltending, who's going to pick up the ball and run with it now that Landon Bumgardner, a senior, who really elevated his game from last year's playoffs through this season. He's been their best player.
All right, let's switch gears. Let's go girls basketball. Let's start in the MAC. Both Port Huron schools coming into the final week of the regular season, they need to find a way to turn it around and get some positive momentum going into a district that, while still tough, is not as tough as it's been in years past. I wish one of these teams was red hot going into the district so we could pound the table and say, yes, finally, Northern or PH is going to get through. They're both struggling. Northern, their record's down to 12-9. PH 8-11, although PH in the red. They had basically 4 auto losses with Ike and Ford in there. What do you make of the two Port Huron area schools?
Well, I'm with you. I wish they were playing a little better right now. But that being said, they have the potential because they both play defense, and that's a good start. And the second start is they're streaky. And if Charlotte Eastman gets hot, if Mariah Turner gets hot, that's how far PH and Northern will go, and that's how well they'll go. Is they need to get some kids shooting the ball. Another year where Northern gets a bad break. Kate Nichols, who is a good scorer but probably their best defender, is out. And for PH, I just don't know. I can't put my finger on it because back at Christmas time, back when the Weimer tournament was going on, they were just dynamite.
They didn't really struggle in that tournament.
No, they kind of breezed through everybody, and now they're really struggling. And again, it's how do you judge it? Because Eisenhower is otherworldly, Ford is otherworldly. Grosse Pointe South is not a bad team. No. Their record is down because they're like PH. They've got to play those other teams, and you're not going to beat them. But so the tough schedule is part of it. But I just feel like there's more there at PH than what they're given right now.
Yeah, then that's a little bit of the frustrating part is that it's in there, and they're not having a bad season by any means, but they are not what we hoped they could be at one point this year. The flip of that is Marysville. About the end of December, start of January, you were kind of in the, all right, this might be a lost year, see what they can build on, and whoever's coming back can, maybe look to next year. Vikings have started to turn it on. They're up to 9 wins, 11 losses on the season. They just beat Northern to get their 4th league win. And if they win their 2 games this week and they're favored against Almont and Richmond, they'll have a 500 season. And Dennis, if you would have told me that 45 days ago, I'd have said, yep, let's make a deal right now because that's not going to happen.
I saw them at the beginning of the year against Lakeview, who is not that good, and they struggled to get 15 points in that game, and they got smoked, and I thought, oh my goodness. Around Christmas time, the pattern was they'd come out flying, have a great first quarter, and then run out of gas, and in the last 3 quarters not get as many points as they'd scored in the first. And then somewhere in the last month or so, somebody flipped the switch there. Ryan and Kendall Quain started scoring consistently 10 to 15 points a game, and Marysville is playing their best basketball of the season right now, and we know they're always going to play defense. Now they're getting some offense. In a single game elimination, I'm not saying they're the favorite in their district, but I'm not nuts about playing them.
No, beginning of the year, you're probably thinking, all right, cool, a team I don't need to worry about.
Yep.
That, if we get them, cool, we'll take care of business. And like you said, they play defense, they play structured. They would be a team I don't want to match up with. And I think a team that doesn't want to match up with them is St. Clair. Now, they're 15-5. They've had a nice year. Unfortunately, they dropped both to Roseville in the MAC Gold. That'll probably cost them their league. So now they'll have to turn to the district to try to get a trophy in the case.
And the problem with that district, and I like all these teams, there's some teams that play great defense, but the team that probably plays the best defense and has the best players and the most offense is Armada. And that's going to be tough for everybody else, as good as I think they are and as well as I think they're all playing.
And we'll talk about that in a bit. Marine City, they're having a better year than maybe some thought. They're 8-12. They basically graduated 95% of the score, and we've talked about that before. But they've beat a lot of teams they were supposed to beat. And while they might not be a huge threat in the district, I think this is a very nice building block year going into next season.
Well, Haslam played really well for them this year. And you know what? They're another one. They play defense. We talked about it a little on the podcast. They're a little different than some of the other teams. Like St. Clair will be aggressive and they'll force turnovers and get baskets off that. Whereas Marine City, they don't mind playing defense for 45 seconds because what they'll do is make you pass it around the top till you get so frustrated that you just jack up a bad shot.
In the BWAC, it's a pretty simple race. Yale and Armada. They both split. Yale won the first. Armada won the most recent meeting. They have another game left in the BWAC. It doesn't matter. They're going to split the BWAC title. It's not official as we record this. I'm going to call it official.
They both still have to win a game that they're favored to win.
By a lot.
Yeah.
So they'll split the title. And Dennis, I don't want to look too far ahead with these two, but I have a feeling we've only had the sequel and not the trilogy quite yet. I think the trilogy's coming in a regional semifinal.
Well, that's the fun part about it is that they're getting separated, and Armada's going over with our MAC schools, and Yale's going to play the BWAC schools again, which...
Croslex is a team that, you don't love to play a third time, and I think they're hosting the district.
Yeah.
So that makes it a little more, or they're hosting the region, I believe.
But Yale's got the best player, and as we've kind of found out as the year has gone along, she's got a supporting cast. It's not all Sadie, but it's really nice to know that when the chips are down and you absolutely need it, you've got a Sadie Dykstra who wants the ball and can do good things with it.
As one coach told me when talking about her, like there's sometimes she'll make a move, get to the basket, and he'll just look at the bench and go, yeah, I can't do anything about that. Like it's inevitable at times. But when they beat Armada, Sadie had a nice game. She had a nice game in the loss too. But it was Barr, Runnels, Martin, and all the other players for them, Churchill, that contributed, that got them to 70 points in that win.
Yeah. So when they've got a couple of shooters and they've got a center that they're actually going to a lot more, and they're trying to establish Barr early in games, and Kimmy Martin's the wild card. And when they get 2 or 3 other girls besides Sadie, they're tough.
Yes, they are. All right, that'll do it for hockey and girls basketball. Boys districts tip off tonight on Monday. We'll dive into that. We have a potential for a lot of fun matchups this week in the district. We'll talk about that when we come back here on the Get Stuck on Sports TV edition right here on Thumb Coast TV.
From doctor's appointments to work, shopping, and dining adventures, Blue Water Area Transit buses are the lifeline of our community. Depend on us for a ride that connects you to life's essentials. Blue Water Area Transit. Ride the wave.
Riding the bus will avoid the hustle and save you lots of dough. Road rage, don't chance it. Ride Blue Water Transit everywhere you go.
Welcome back to the Get Stuck on Sports TV edition right here on Thumb Coast TV. Brady, Dennis. All right, boys basketball districts tip off tonight. Let's start in Division I because, you know, Dennis, I like to get excited about potential matchups.
Not you.
Usually it happens more in football than anything else when you can look down the road and go, we can get this and it would be a lot of fun. The Division I district at Port Huron High. PH and Northern are the number 1 and the number 2 seeds respectively. What does that mean? They're on opposite sides of the bracket, and they also get a bye, so they won't play till Wednesday. Northern plays the winner of Dakota and Anchor Bay. PH plays the winner of L'Anse Creuse and L'Anse Creuse North. In all likelihood, Northern will play Dakota, PH will play L'Anse Creuse North. If they both win, that would mean we'd get something that we haven't had in over 20 years. One of them is going to win a district title for the first time in 2+ decades. And 2, a Northern High district final at PH would be absolutely electric, and I need it bad, and I wouldn't even be the one doing the game.
Well, I'm going to say this, that I think Northern's the favorite in this district, but after their recent game with Cass Tech, PH is dangerous.
They only lost 66-63 at Cass Tech.
Now that being said, remember PH to get to the finals or to win the district, they're likely going to have to beat 2 of the 3 teams they lost to this season. But I think the first matchup with L'Anse Creuse North, different PH team than 2 or 3 games into the season when they played that game.
The theme of this district is exercising your demons. For PH, you mentioned it. They have 3 losses on the year. The one you just mentioned that happened last Friday to Cass Tech. 1 to Port Huron Northern that was basically as Santa was getting ready to deliver presents. And 1 against L'Anse Creuse North that the season wasn't even, the body of football season wasn't cold yet. They'd probably play L'Anse Creuse North in a district semifinal, and if I get my way, they'd play a Northern team in the finals, a chance to avenge both of those losses, and I know the Red Hawks are chomping at the bit. Most wins in a year since 1995. I wasn't alive last time they won 18 games in a season. They haven't lost at home, and yes, as I've mentioned, the districts are at Port Huron High.
And they've also, another big thing, they got like 5-6 guys that are going right now, going good. Led by Jaden Carswell, who has emerged as, I think, a superstar. We know that Garrett James on any night can shoot the lights out.
He has been a superstar.
If Trey Thompson accepts his role and does all the things that he can do, because he can score, he can distribute. He actually, for a guard, he rebounds a lot too. I love Tassan Lunn. He's really filled a role that they were lacking in last year, and they still won a league title. But
Jackson Rowe brings some toughness.
He's their Swiss Army knife, and some nights he's on and he can shoot the 3, and also is a rebounder. So I like what they've got going on. We talk about Northern a lot. Their starting 5 is as good as anybody. With Haryu and Jameson and Amir, they're never out of a game, but I know they've beaten Dakota twice in the regular season. They have a demon that is beat Dakota in a playoff game.
I will just let you go on your rant about this because you've been doing it a lot longer than I have, and even when I was in school and before that, Dakota's been a barrier for both PH and Northern, and it feels like any time, and especially recently, any time Northern or High have a really nice team, Dakota's the brick wall they run into, and the season's like, yes, we have a good team, and Dakota, done.
If you won't do it for yourselves, and I think you should do it for yourselves, do it for Tyler Jamison. Because 2 years in a row, I thought Northern had the team that could do it, and 2 years in a row, it didn't happen. And the last one, his senior year, he had a shot at the buzzer, and it didn't go, and they lost that game, and they weren't supposed to lose that game. They were supposed to be better than Dakota that year, and it didn't happen. And a couple of years ago, they had to play on a Saturday. In the,
it was his sophomore year, I think?
Final, and he played out of his mind on a bad ankle and carried that team into the fourth quarter, and then the wheels fell off the wagon then, like so close, and they haven't been able to get it. Now, they kind of took it to Dakota in the regular season in the 2 games in the red. Take it to them a third time. Beat them in the playoffs, completely exercise the ghost.
And if for nothing else, also do it for Dennis. He needs.
I want this bad.
Dennis is usually the more reserved of the two of us, as I'm sure you've come to find out. I don't think I've ever seen you this fired up for them to beat an opponent. Well, that has a realistic shot. Like sometimes when
I want them to beat De La Salle in football, right, but that just isn't realistic.
When they beat them in hockey, that was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun.
You have never been so fired up going into a potential matchup as you were this one. Should be a lot of fun over on 24th Street all week long. Division 2, I'll be down in Marysville for a I guess the theme of the last one was exercising demons. The theme of this one's rivalries, because the opening matchups tonight on Monday is Marysville against Marine City, rather. Big rivalry. Algonac against Richmond. Not as big of a rivalry, but still a conference matchup that hasn't been the warmest matchup between the two. I don't think they particularly like each other. And then the winners, so whether Marysville or Marine City wins, Marysville, probably the favorite, will go on to take St. Clair, who is the heavy favorite in this district. And then if Richmond wins, they'll get Armada. And for
probably their biggest rival.
Yeah, and for those people that are more MAC-oriented in PH, Marysville, don't think too much about Richmond Armada, that would probably be one of the 5 biggest rivalries in our area if we had to rank them out. They don't like each other either, so it could be a really fun district. All that to be said, Dennis, you have to convince me St. Clair isn't winning this district and winning both games by 10-plus points.
Well, I just think they're playing the best basketball, and honestly, the team that might be playing the second best basketball going into this district is Marysville.
But even they struggled a little bit. Like their one win last week, they played 3-3. They had to go to overtime and still only got to, I think, 48 points. And that's part of the reason why it's St. Clair so heavily for me, is every other team has, for lack of a better term, disappointed me.
Yeah.
All right, Algonac and Marine City. They're just not in a spot to win a district right now. I think they're taking small steps towards being a more relevant program, but I just can't see them winning 3 games in a week, and 2 of them would be massive upsets.
Yeah.
Armada, if we played this district in the middle of January, we'd have had some competition. We'd have had some debate on whether it was St. Clair or Armada. The last month has not been kind to the Tigers. Richmond, they have not been able to figure it out all year. I think they won 4 BWAC games. 2 of them were Algonac. 1 was Almont, and they got, North Branch?
Yeah.
They got the one time. That was their signature win in league. I think they've beaten 2 teams that are, 3 teams that are Division II, Algonac, North Branch, and Marysville without their best player back in December.
Yeah, I think.
And then Marysville, as we mentioned, struggling.
Outside of St. Clair, Richmond has the most talent, but they haven't been able to put it together. They're the most Jekyll and Hyde team I've seen in my life.
And it's not game to game either. It's within the
quarter
games.
to quarter. Yeah, sometimes within possession to possession. But that game, and I think they're going to advance, and they're going to play Armada, and the winner of that game is going to probably lose to St. Clair.
And I don't mean to be a downer about this district, but St. Clair hasn't disappointed us. They ended up the regular season 17-5. Their 5 losses, all to Division I schools. Anchor Bay was the oopsie game, looking back on it with hindsight. If they played again, I'd pick St. Clair. Oxford won. I didn't look at the final total. They were 17-0 at one point. Yeah. They lost to PH twice. Rewind 5 minutes to hear our thoughts on them. And their last one was to Northern. Rewind 5.5 minutes to hear our thoughts on them. So they've played as tough of a schedule as you can ask for, and they've come out pretty much smelling like roses. Every team they lost to, sans Anchor Bay, has a legit shot to win their district and make noise in a regional in Division I. Good news for them, they don't have to play anyone like that in Division II for a while.
Yeah, and they have the best player in this district, and they also have the best supporting cast to go with that player.
Yes, that's the other thing is that Braylon Franz is a bona fide superstar. He will likely end up being the all-time leading scorer at St. Clair. He will threaten 2,000 points. That hopefully he stays healthy. He can threaten 2,000 points, which I don't know if anyone in our area has ever done. But as you mentioned, the supporting cast. Drew McCartney is the big inside. You have Donnie Shaw. You have Turner. You have shooters in Michael Franz, and Jackson Distelrath comes off the bench. Graham Parlarge comes off the bench. And Jaden Shelton. They all complement each other. Bouliard, who he didn't have for the first 3 quarters of the season, and they all fill a role.
There almost isn't enough time in the game to get everybody the minutes they need.
Right. So that's why they're so dangerous is, it's not, if we stop Braylon Franz, they have nothing. They have a lot more besides just him. Let's go up to Croswell, where the other D2 district we have. In fact, the winner of this district will meet the winner of the Marysville district, guaranteeing us a regional finalist. I like that. This district, the theme is, I have no idea. Yale hung on to win a BWAC title. They beat Armada on Friday. After losing 2 straight, they had to get a win. Because of that 2-game losing streak, Emily City got a share of the league title. Oh, and Croslex finished a game out, and they are hosting the district. The way I look at it, Dennis, you have about a 30% chance for the 3 teams I just mentioned, Yale, Emily City, and Croslex. I don't know who to give the edge to. The weird stat about those 3 teams, of every game they've played against each other, the home team's 0-6.
Yeah, that's the weird one, because these are good teams that don't lose at home.
No, and they lost to Croslex lost to Yale and Emily City at home, and yada yada. And I'd put about a 5 to 10% chance that something wacky happens between North Branch and Almont, and they play lights out, because North Branch is not a terrible team. And I could see in some universe them going on a generational run and just ruining those 3 teams as fun.
Yeah, my feeling is Yale's got to be pleased with where they're at. They have, I don't want to call it an easy path, but the easier path, because Emily City and Croslex have to play each other. One of them has to lose the game, and the other might be a little beaten up for Friday night's final. And if I'm Yale, that's what I'm hoping for. And if you're Yale, you're the co-league champ. You have to beat North Branch or Almont, whoever comes out of that game. You just simply have to beat them.
It feels like you can't look too far ahead, and I know that's weird for the 3 main teams we just mentioned. It's 2 games, and especially for Yale, they're going to be the heavy favorite in the first game. But if you look past and you're worried about Croslex and Emily City, I wouldn't put it past Almont or North Branch to at least give you a scare and having to play a team a 3rd time. Croslex being at home. Dennis, as confident as I felt about St. Clair winning their district, I am equally as confident that I have no idea what's going to happen here. I could have 3 different people tell me, well, this is why Emily City, this is why Yale, this is why Croslex is going to win it, and I would probably go, yeah, you're right, to all 3 of them.
Well, and I think and this is where the BWAC gets wacky, is I think the path to winning it if you're Croslex and Emily City is if you get to Friday night, you want to play lockdown defense, and so we'll have an 80-76 game.
Right, because there's some factors up in the air. Xander Nash, he's been hurt. He did play in the game against Yale last week that Emily City won that allowed them to get a share of the league title. You could tell he was nursing some injuries. We'll see where he's at. I think Croslex is over the illness they've had last week. I mean, they got a couple of pair of wins, maybe not as big as they would have liked, but they got 2 wins. And Yale, I want to know where their psyche's at. I'm glad that they beat Armada. I think they desperately needed that to kind of get back on the winning track. They had lost 1 game before that 5-day stretch where they lost 2. How did that team handle losing? Well, they came back and beat Armada. I like that a lot.
Yeah. The other motivating thing for me, if I'm Yale, I want to play St. Clair again.
Yes, because
I want to play St. Clair.
Because Yale got
that was their worst game.
They got de-pantsed by St. Clair in the first matchup. Be fun in a regional out at Emily City. Just saying, wouldn't mind that at all. All right, we'll give you all the results from the boys' districts on next Monday's show. We'll talk about what girls' districts are going to look like next week as well. Don't miss it. We'll be here next week here on the Get Stuck on Sports TV edition right here on Thumbcoast TV.